Olin.
Remain seated, please. Permanecer sentados, por favor.
To all who come to this happy place, welcome.
Our largest single-theme land expansion ever.
Now we want you to share with us our latest and greatest dream.
Matterhorn Matt presents Matterhorn Mondays.
Well. Welcome back to the episode, to the show, everybody. Welcome to episode 151 of Matterhorn Mondays, coming to you all, of course, live from the Outpost. I am your host. It's me, Matterhorn Matt.
And I am Jeremy.
It is Jeremy. Yay! Let's do this thing. We got a great episode planned for you all today. Lots of great topics that we're excited to get into. But before all of that, I'm sure you all know the deal. Links to all the social media will be down in the description, as well as links to Alex's YouTube channel, of course, linked down below. This is normally the time of the year where Alex reads off his ghost stories for the show for everybody to listen to. And since he's not on the show, he actually put out, I think, 2 videos recently of him recounting, or 3 videos actually, him recounting his own personal ghost stories that he's experienced around Disneyland Park. And then I think another video is just like running down the popular sort of urban, or I guess like popular ghosts that people have seen around the park. So if you guys are looking for your story, spooky story fix, head on over to Alex's channel. Of course, the link will be down below. And if you'd like to be wished a happy birthday live on the stream, you can do so by clicking the link down below, submitting your name in the Google form, and we will add you to our birthday calendar. And it looks like this whole week, there's no birthdays this week, you guys. No one in the world, the history of the world, was born during these 7 days. But I'm not 100% sure if I ran through last week's birthdays. I'm going to do it again just in case I did forget. Last Wednesday, the 14th, was Sarah Butterfly's birthday. Happy birthday to Sarah. And Friday, the 16th, was Bryce McKenzie's birthday. And last but not least, Saturday, the 17th, was Delta Dizzy's birthday. I think I actually did run through those the past episode. But, can't hurt to be thorough, I guess. But like I said, we have a great episode planned, and we're expecting all of you guys to call in 575-386-5814. Drop a voicemail. We prefer for them to be, under a minute if, that's all right with you guys. Drop a voicemail on any of the topics that we're going to be talking about. If you have any thoughts, we'd love to hear what you have to think. And, Jeremy, anything you'd like to say before we get into today's episode?
No.
All right. Well, like I said, we do
My back hurts. I don't know.
Oh, yeah. Well, my back hurts too from carrying the show. Just kidding. But yeah, like I said, we have some great topics planned today, and I don't have any Snapple this week, but I have McDonald's Powerade, if that counts. It doesn't count as Snapple, but I have a type of drink, and it's not really worthy to play the Matt Snaps theme, and I'm only just saying that because my soundboard's broken and I haven't fixed it yet, so I can't play the Matt Snaps theme. So I'd like you all to take a few seconds, imagine the theme for Matt Snaps playing in your head, and then, we'll just continue on from there. But it is, of course, time to get into this week's News from the Peak.
We now present to you News from the Peak.
And for our first bit of News from the Peak today, new content advisory has appeared on certain episode or certain movies on Disney Plus. Let's see here. New content warning has appeared before content containing racist and immoral depictions or attitudes of marginalized groups. The warning reads, quote, "This program includes negative depictions and or mainstream or mistreatment of people or cultures. These stereotypes were wrong then and are wrong now. Rather than remove this content, we want to acknowledge its harmful impact, learn from it, and spark conversation to create a more inclusive future together." So this is something we've been asking for Disney to do ever since they launched Disney Plus. I believe some of the other Warner Brothers Shorts already had this kind of thing on other streaming services, but it's nice that Disney is putting this warning out there. And for our second bit of news from the peak here today, this is actually a very popular rumor that's been going around. I felt I couldn't find a place to throw it in anywhere else in the show, so we're going to throw it in here. This is, of course, a rumor. Tron and Guardians of the Galaxy coasters will not be open until 2022. Now, of course, I'm sure you all know the rides were supposed to be open next year in time for the 50th anniversary of the resort, but we'll have links down in the description, of course, linking to all the articles, videos that we refer to if you'd like any further information on this. But yeah, from what I've been understanding, the rumor goes that Disney is trying to, I believe they only have about 1 month left of construction, then they're going to, put everybody off from construction and take them back, a few months later to resume construction. So yeah, of course, that is a very popular rumor that has been going around. But for our second and final bit of news from the peak, we missed this, when it happened, actually. But Cinderella Castle has been lit up, or was lit up, purple and gold for the Lakers championship win. Yeah, I called it, you guys. I knew they were going to win. Not saying that based off any bias or anything. But as you guys know, the NBA season, of course, concluded with the Lakers winning the NBA championship. And since the games were all played on or in the bubble on Disney property, the castle was lit up the Lakers color to, pay respects to, nobody died, but, honor the team that won the bubble tournament, I guess is what you could say. And from my understanding, there have been zero cases that have emerged from, I guess, since the bubble happened till it ended. There were no COVID cases that crept up or popped up from the bubble. So, good for the NBA for keeping that on track. Can't really compare that to the NFL, where they have to reschedule all these games because their players and coaches get COVID. But Jeremy, what are your thoughts on this week's news from the peak?
My hometown is Los Angeles, so congratulations to the Lakers.
Yes.
Let's hope the Dodgers pull off a World Series. And now the things went away, so I can't talk about any of the rest of them because I won't remember what they are. Okay. The construction rumor is just that, a rumor. I don't really have anything to say about it. The content advisory, yeah, I think that's really interesting. I think they what would have been better and less jarring is to have like a TCM kind of host to give not just context to things that might be culturally insensitive, but just context in general. We already have, there's already a sort of Disney, a film historian in general, Leonard Maltin, who specializes in a lot of Disney film history, who a lot of the community already knows and loves as the sort of the sort of patented Disney film intro person. I think they should rehire him, and I think they should use him as an intro for all of the classics. Doesn't matter if there's issues or not. And I do think it's a more immersive and engaging way to give people context both to those things and other things as well. So I don't know if an advisory is enough really, but it's certainly something, that's for sure.
Yeah, and he did a great job hosting the Disney Treasures DVD box.
Yeah.
If you go to the channel, you'll see some of those that we've uploaded with his prelude in there. He seems like a really cool guy. I'd love to have him back. I'd love to have him on the show, but
that'd be great.
Yeah, that'd be cool. But I'd love to have him back on the at least on the Disney Plus side of things to.
Right. Yeah.
Like Jeremy said, but that has been this week's news from the peak, and I'm going to make the news disappear right before your eyes, you guys. Whoa, there it goes. It's gone. Isn't that so cool? Wow. Yeah, round of applause. But we do have some great main topics that we're excited to get into today. First topic, Elizabeth Warren asks for transparency from the Walt Disney Company regarding recent layoffs. And second and final, of course, the state of California officially releases the theme park reopening guidelines. And we're going to be covering Disney's response that they put out just, I think just under an hour they put out that response once they were released. So excited to get into that as well. But For our first topic of the day, like I mentioned here, Elizabeth Warren asks for transparency from the Walt Disney Company regarding recent layoffs. And like I mentioned, links to all of these articles will be down in the description below if you'd like to read up further on them. Let's see here. Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren wrote a letter to Disney's top executives, Bob Chapek and Bob Iger, this week. And this was, of course, last week, not this week. Just to clarify, but the letter scolded executives for restoring their full salaries before laying off 28,000 furloughed theme park workers. And in the letter, Warren points out that Warren points out that although Disney blames the layoffs for the failure to reopen Disneyland, the majority of these fired working at Walt Disney World in Florida were at Walt Disney World in Florida. And Warren ended the letter with 7 questions, requesting for more information regarding the layoffs. And, of course, in response, Disney stated that Warren's letter was misinformed and filled with inaccuracies. That's kind of an interesting statement there. Disney did not state what these inaccuracies are, nor did they answer any of Warren's questions. So, yeah, kind of a big controversial topic here. Jeremy, what are your thoughts just right off the bat from the letter that Elizabeth Warren sent to the Disney executives?
Yeah, right. Well, it's really interesting. It's interesting how this is sort of taking on a sort of national presence. It's not just something we're talking about here in the sort of Disney fan community. And I think that's really important, right? Because sort of a central theme that I think I'll be talking on a lot today is how we do tend to live in our own bubble, and myself included. And when these outside issues start converging with the issues of a company that we like to talk about, it becomes harder and harder to just sort of live in the bubble of Disney and talking about those things. I think she's spot on with this letter. I think these are appropriate questions to ask, and that's all she's doing. She's asking questions here. She's curious. She wants to know. She's skeptical, as am I, as I've been on this show many times over these layoffs. She's skeptical. She wants to know why that decision was made when really only a month earlier, senior executive salaries were restored. And I've had those same questions too. Why was that decision made? Was it really the only decision that could have been made at the time? To me, it doesn't seem like it was. And I've said many times it has felt like a PR strategy to put pressure on the state. I want to pull up the article here just so I have reference to the 7 questions, which seems like it's going to be difficult to do. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So yeah, those are my initial thoughts regarding that. I don't know if you have any thoughts about it, Matt, and we can go from there.
Yeah, I'm trying to find the 7 questions here. Let's see. Senators Warren, this is coming from WDW News Today, and like I said, links will be down below if you'd like to read up on the full sort of letter that she read off. But Senator Warren's letter concluded with a series of specific follow-up questions. 1. Which types of Disney employees will be laid off per Mr. DeMaro's September 29th, 2020 memo? What was the anticipated monthly total cost of wages for these employees? Do any of these employees... This is all one question. There's more to come. Do any of these employees have recall rights? If so, will these individuals retain their seniority if rehired by Disney? And the second question here, how were decisions made with regard to which employees would be laid off? 3, will Disney provide health care coverage for laid-off employees? Will Disney cover any premiums for this health care coverage? If so, which laid-off employees? 4th question here, how much in total compensation has Disney awarded each of its top executives and its board members? And then 5th, what specific cuts in executive salary and compensation were made at the beginning of the pandemic? Are reports that these cuts have been reversed in whole or in part accurate? 6th question here, what is the total value of stock buybacks made by Disney in each quarter starting in, FY 2016? To what extent did this increase the stock's value, and to what extent did it benefit top executives and members of the board? And finally, how much has Disney paid its shareholders in dividends in each year since 2017? To what extent did this benefit top executives and members of the board? Excuse me. Now, from my understanding here, I have been reached out from some of my people, or I guess friends who work at the who work for Disney, work in Disneyland, work in Disney World, and I believe that actually just a few days ago they were sort of sent out a big email containing the list, and I think the reasoning. I could be mistaken. I don't want to like direct quote from him because it was like insider. I don't want to insider information, but yeah, a big email was sent out to the cast members detailing which of the cast members would be laid off. So I do know that for sure, and I don't have that on me because just to respect my friend's privacy. But yeah, I agree with Miss Elizabeth Warren here. And I don't think we really hammered home the last time we talked about this, about the executives sort of bringing back their salary from the pay cuts. I think we just briefly touched on that, but I think that is also worth bringing up even more than we discussed previously, because, it is very strange to me that they would be bringing back their full salaries, just a few months after they cut them, and then, just a month later they lay off 28,000 employees. So it doesn't, like we said last week, it doesn't look good for the Walt Disney Company either way.
Yeah, I agree. And something I find really interesting, which is something that I've been talking about, is she doesn't address the letter to Josh D'Amaro. And I think that's a really important detail, because there's been a lot of, and I think it's, again, he's complicit, obviously. We've talked about this. But I think that's an important detail, because I've always been the one to say, and many other people have, that this is a top-down decision. This isn't Josh D'Amaro making this decision and getting approval from the top. This is something that comes from the board of directors, from the shareholders, from the Bobs, if you will, and it goes down. Did Josh want to do it? We'll never know the answer to that unless he reveals this in an interview years after he retires. We'll never know. But he did do it, and we know that, and we should still hold him accountable for that. But I think this sort of puts rest a little bit to the idea that who is directly responsible. Is it Josh D'Amaro, or is it more people at the top? I always felt it's more obvious at the top. I think Elizabeth Warren has a stronger understanding of corporate structures than I do, because that's really what she specializes in protecting people from as senator. So I think she would know that this definitely comes from Mr. Bob Chapek and Mr. Bob Iger. And I think all of those questions are absolutely appropriate. I don't think they're particularly partisan questions. She's asking for clarification. She's asking for transparency for the sake and benefit of the 28,000 employees. I don't know how anyone could be against that. So I think these are appropriate questions. The fact that Disney has dismissed them, let me put it this way: if they weren't guilty, if they didn't have a guilty conscience over this, I think that they would say, I'd be more than happy to answer your questions. This is what's happened. This is the reasons why we had to do this. We didn't want to do this. Here are the reasons why. It seems like they might have little something to hide. It might be that she might have hit a little too close to home, I think, in her analysis.
Yeah, and I do have Disney's statement here, like I mentioned. Quote, Senator Warren's misinformed letter contains a number of inaccuracies. We've oh my gosh.
Unequivocally,
there it is. We've unequivocally demonstrated our ability to operate, respond. He could have just said that, and it looks the same as how it is spelled, so it could be completely wrong, but I'm just going to roll with it. Demonstrated our ability to operate...
Never mind. Continue.
Okay. Demonstrated our ability to operate responsibly with strict health and safety protocols. So yeah, like we mentioned, Disney does sort of dodge all of those questions, and yeah, it does look very sus from Disney's end. And yeah, I do. Why did Disney have to reinstate the cut salaries from the executives? It is very strange to me, and. I'm still, I don't know if I'm going to regret saying this in the future, but I'm still on the Josh D'Amaro bandwagon, at least for the most part. I think from what we've seen in the past, he's been doing, a good job. He's been shown that he cares about the parks. He's been shown that he cares about the cast members especially, and I'm sure it was very hard for him to make this decision. we've sort of just come to the general consensus that it did come from the higher ups, the board members, from the higher up executives. But he did still sign off on the statement that was released that attacked the state of California. His name was on that letter, so that can't really be you can't really take that and not put that into context with all of this. But yeah, those are my thoughts on Miss Warren's letter to Mr. Disney. Jeremy, any other thoughts here?
Am I still on the Josh D'Amaro bandwagon? Let me put it this way. Listen, he's still complicit in this decision making. Hey, maybe he secretly elected to not take his 7-figure salary. I don't know. If that's the case, that good for him. I'm glad he's not even publicly acknowledging it. But I have a feeling he's still taking his 7-figure salary, and I think I should rightfully be skeptical about that. While 28,000 minimum wage or a little more employees have been laid off and are now, stressed financially. I can relate to that. Yeah. I mean, it's hard for me to still be on the bandwagon. I will say this, he's still different than Chapek in the sense that he makes an effort to be present among the people that he employs. He makes an effort to be active. I do think if anyone's more likely to be caught up in the mix of what's going on, it's him. And we don't know behind the scenes. We don't know if he's in those boardrooms putting his fist down, pulling a George Bailey and It's a Wonderful Life. I don't know. I don't know any of those things. I don't think George Bailey would have taken a 7-figure salary in any time in his life. But I think again she hit a home run with this, and the fact that Disney doesn't even answer, I think that is them. That's showing their true colors, and I think that's them pretty much revealing that she's spot on. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, like I mentioned, it's a really lengthy actual full letter that she sent to Disney. Link to all that will be down in the description below if you'd like to read the full thing. Of course, like I mentioned, it is pretty lengthy, but we hit all the big points, the big questions that she had there. But before we get into our second main topic, let's go ahead and get into this week's COVID headlines rundown. I don't have the theme song working because my soundboard's broken. So again, everybody close your eyes. Imagine you hear the People Mover music in the background, and you hear my friend Jason at Disney Dude on Twitter doing the voiceover. This week, Matterhorn Matt and friends discuss the COVID stories from Disney. That's not how it goes, word for word, but I tried my best. So for this week's COVID headlines rundown today, Disney CEO says, quote unquote, arbitrary Disneyland reopening guidelines not based on quote unquote actual facts. I think this is an old, the way I said that made me laugh. I think this is an old headline since the new guidelines.
Yeah, this is pre the news today for sure.
News today. But second headline here, Disneyland Resort faces $2 billion revenue loss during the coronavirus closure, analyst warns. And finally here, Disneyland reaches return to work agreements with 11 employee unions. That's an interesting article as well. Links to all these will be down in the description below if you'd like to read up further on them. But this leads us into what feels like our second topic for the past 5 months has been. When will Disneyland reopen? And that answer has become a little bit more clear just today. What is today? Tuesday, the 20th of October. The state of California finally officially released the theme park reopening guidelines. Now, I believe we touched just a few episodes ago about the leaked guidelines that were put out. Of course, Disney and other theme parks asked the state of California to pull back from releasing those, or I guess hold off from releasing those, and so they could get together, try and hash things out. And surprise, surprise, basically nothing has changed from the guidelines that were leaked to the guidelines that have been officially proposed or officially released here today. So, yeah, literally just a few hours ago, the state of California officially released the reopening guidelines. And yeah, like I said, it's not looking good for Disneyland. It's not looking good for really any major theme park in Southern California, and California really in general. After the leaked guidelines we discussed just a couple weeks ago, the state has now officially released the guidelines, and those are as follows. Theme parks will be separated from smaller theme parks, 15K guests and below, and larger theme parks with those above that capacity of guests. Smaller parks can reopen at 25% capacity when the county they're in is in the orange tier. And interestingly enough here, only outdoor attractions can be operating, no indoor attractions whatsoever. And ticket sales are limited to those visitors, to only those visitors who are in the same county as the, as the theme park that they're in. That's just for the smaller theme parks, and for all other larger theme parks, they are allowed to reopen at 25% capacity when the county is in the yellow tier. And it doesn't state specifically whether or not that those outdoor attractions only and the limited radius of those who can visit apply to this as well. I'm inferring, because it wasn't very clear, I'm inferring that those do not apply to these larger theme parks, but it was kind of unclear in the way that they presented that. But anyways, and of course all theme parks must implement a reservation system, screen guests for symptoms in advance, and of course the face coverings will be mandatory. Okay, well, I just completely forgot that we skipped over the commercial break, but that's okay, I guess. We can just continue going. Commercial break. Well, anyways, yeah, so those are the brand new theme park reopening guidelines. I got thrown off by the song that we forgot to have. But Jeremy, like I mentioned, these are really sort of unchanged from the leaked guidelines that we got just a few weeks ago. But now that they are official, now that they're not, quote unquote leaked, what are your thoughts here on the new guidelines? Do you think the state is being too harsh, or do you think these are, perfect guidelines for theme parks to reopen?
It's really complicated what I'm going through in processing this. It goes back to what I was mentioning earlier of, mitigating living in the Disney community bubble and the outside world perception of that, which might be called reality. I don't know. But it's difficult. I do think that it might be a tad too harsh. I know there's people laughing at me going, a tad too harsh. It's way too harsh. This is the harshest. It's not. I'm sorry to break it to you, but it's not the most extreme that you could do. That's the narrative that we've been surrounding ourselves by for multiple reasons. I kind of tense up when I say that, or when I read things that allow me to go to that place, because there's a part of me that wants to go, wow, this is obscene. It's really not. There are other industries that are not reopening until mid 2021 that are similar to the theme park industry. And those communities, while it's sad, while it's frustrating, while it's stressful, there's a level of understanding and cooperation across the board on that. The leaders of those industries are not throwing public hissy fits and using the livelihoods of their employees as a PR strategy. And I think it's very telling. And I think it's very overt. I can't look at how Disney has been responding to this and just not be skeptical. Do I think Newsom hasn't been great with communication? Yeah, I'm sure it hasn't been the best collaborative environment to be in working this out. I absolutely think that could have been better. I think there's a case for opening large theme parks in the orange tier. If anyone's making the argument to just open right now, well, they might have an argument for it, but that might just be me wanting to go back into the safety bubble of our community, and dealing with that. But no, it's complicated, and yes, I do find it a little strange how these press releases from Disney have been from executives, not public health experts. You would think that if Disney really wants to tout and prove and show off their extremely safe, science-based methods of safety that they would want to have experts come in and speak on behalf of the Disney company and say, yes, they are good to go. I'm an expert in public health. I can tell you this is the best you're going to get at this.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, they are following the CDC guidelines for parks and recreation. Right. That's fantastic. I'm sure it's doing a lot more than if they weren't following those guidelines. But here's the thing. Here's the popular talking point. Disney World has 0 cases attached to the parks. The reason why we have 0 cases attached to the parks is because we have no national contact tracing plan, and there's no real contact tracing in the state of Florida in general, and there's no real contact tracing within the Walt Disney Company, within Walt Disney World in general. For example, I was reading today, if someone who lived in a different state, visited Disney World, somehow got the disease in Disney World, but is a resident of that state, it's going to count toward that state. It's not going to count toward contracted at Epcot. It's not going to count as that. It's much more complicated. And because it's complicated and a little muddy and a little gray, the reason for that is because there is no comprehensive contact tracing plan, even at a state level. So that's very good for rhetoric and crafting PR for Disney, because they can say there are 0 cases to world. Well, there are 0 because there is no way of knowing that. There's no way of knowing there's not 0. So there must be. Of course, we also know that cast members have come out, and the unions have come out saying Disney does not communicate to all departments whether there are cases in certain other departments. They've only been telling the departments that involve unions and those specific departments. So we do know that there are cast members who have contracted the disease. Whether they've contracted it at work or not is not the point. They're sometimes still called into work a little earlier. So Disney's done a very good job of burying those stories, and have touted this 0 cases at Disney World thing, which is a sort of half-truth, right? Because, as I said, it's 0 because we don't have that information.
Yeah.
We need to have that information. That information is very valuable. So, so hey, Disney, if I'm wrong and you are walking the walk, get someone from the CDC on board with you. Get public health experts. Get Dr. Fauci to make a statement. If you are walking the walk, then you want every public health official on your side going, yes, they are. Where are they? Use them. And I think if they were there, they would be using them. But right now, I find a little skeptical that we're supposed to take an executive's word whose 7-figure salary was just restored.
Yeah, well said by Jeremy. I do agree it is very strange that they have still been touting that 0 cases, but it's all very complicated, but we'll get to that because we do have a voicemail that I'd like to get to here from Mark TASG, who is in chat. So let's go ahead and take a listen and see what Mr. Mark has to say.
Hey guys, Mark from TASG here. I was watching the presentation earlier this morning, and I noticed that there was a subtitle that went sort of like this: theme parks are higher risk than sporting events, which was also revealed at that same press conference. Yeah. What are your thoughts on that? I'm interested to hear more. Thanks, guys.
So, yeah, that's very interesting. I excluded that from my notes here. I didn't think it was that important, but they did say, I have the slide open here actually. Theme parks are a higher risk setting than outdoor stadiums. A higher risk setting, random large scale, mixing tens of thousands of visitors, and I guess this applies to the theme parks. Tens of thousands of visitors from broad geographic base visiting for a number of days promotes mixing and congregating many frequently touched surfaces and significant impact on surrounding sectors. And then the low-risk setting, controlled large-scale mixing, thousands of visitors from some geographic base visit for a number of hours, pre-assigned seating maintains physical distancing, fewer frequently touched surfaces, and of course easier to monitor compliance at seated events. So yeah, I did exclude that from my notes, but they did bring that up as well. And yeah, that is a very interesting, because we've been sort of spreading the thing where like, oh, I'd rather I think Walt Disney World is safer than like a local grocery store. That's what a lot of people on Twitter have been saying. And I don't know. Here's what I found. My Siri went off for some reason on my watch. I don't know why that happened. It's interesting because I don't know. I don't know if necessarily I agree, but I guess I can see the reasoning behind everybody's in one place for the entire, say it's like a football game, everybody's in one seat for the entire game unless they go to use like the restroom or something. And then of course they have like 6 seats in between the next person. So it would make sense, but yeah, Jeremy, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I can understand on the surface that this sounds like a very absurd statement, but when you actually stop to think about it, it does make a little sense. Now, I don't know if they're talking about it in terms of Disneyland without any things enforced would be less safe than a stadium without things enforced, but I don't know if that's true. What is true is, yes, it is easier to enforce compliance to social distancing and mask wearing in a much more controlled environment like Dodger Stadium than Disneyland. That's just true. I mean, that's just true. I mean, you have the seating assignments. It's just easy to ensure that that's the case, right? I know we think of outdoor stadiums as very rowdy, crowded areas, but actually, because it is such a controlled environment and shape and seating, you can control that better than a theme park. Now, here's where the state of California might get this wrong. The design of Disneyland, especially, takes into consideration crowd control. It does control crowds in its very design. So the challenge for Disney is to figure out how to implement new design philosophies in taking into account social distancing practices, which I'm sure they have been able to do. I've been hearing good things about what goes on at Disney World. When they start to compare the parks around the world, the COVID situation in Japan is so much different than the COVID situation in the United States. I just never find that to be a fair comparison. I think we need to compare California to Florida. I think those are the things you need to compare, and we just need more information. But anyway, I want to stay on topic. So yeah, that does make it sounds absurd at first, but when you think about outdoor stadiums without the way they normally are, but this is outdoor stadiums with specific seating assignments, specific ways of enforcing social distancing. Because it's a more enclosed, limited space, it is actually easier to control. That being said, if there was a study attached to that comment, I'd like to see that study.
Sure.
Again, it's sort of like bring on the public health experts that you've been using to share this information, because that's the info that at least I'm going to trust. And I bet you that more likely comes from a public health expert who's been working on this project than the other way around. So, but I'd still like to see that.
Yeah, and Bunny Mom Julie made a good point in chat. Walt Disney World, in terms of like the walkways, are much bigger compared to Disneyland as well. So you can, of course, make that.
That's a good point.
They're two different. I'm sure it'd be harder in Disneyland to control, but I like to go over once again, as you can see on screen here, these are the risk level tiers for the state of California. And as you all know, the yellow tier, minimal, less than 1. I need to make this full screen because that text is very small. That is less than 1 daily new cases per 100,000, which the positivity rate is less than 2% positive tests. So I like to sort of run through here the numbers. Orange County is currently in the red tier, while Los Angeles County is currently in the purple tier, the highest on that, which is the worst. Which it's that gets even more interesting if you're talking about like Universal Studios trying to reopen. I'm sure it'd take even longer for them just because they're higher up in the list. But let's see here. Yellow tier, like I said, means 1 or less cases per 100,000 new cases, which means around 23 or less cases per day for Orange County. If you take into the population of Orange County, that's 23 or less cases per day for Orange County, and that would qualify them to be in the yellow tier, the minimal tier. In comparison, today Orange County has around 140 new cases per day, so it's really not anywhere close. It's obvious that it's going to take a very long time for not just Disneyland, Knott's Berry Farm, but like I mentioned, Universal Studios as well. If they're in the purple tier, that I'm sure that's even more than 140 cases, 140 daily cases. So it'd probably take even longer for them. And I believe it's also worth noting, I could be mistaken on this, but this is what I've been reading as well. You do have to be in each specific tier. So say, California, Orange County's in the red tier. I believe it would have to take them 2 weeks for them to say they drop from the 1 to 3.9 daily new cases for the moderate tier. They'd have to be in that tier for 2 weeks in order for, for the tier to actually go into effect. So it'd be a pretty lengthy amount of time. If today it'd take at least 4 or more weeks for Disneyland to reopen if things went perfectly smooth. So it is very interesting, and just judging off of that, you can infer that it will take a very long time for these theme parks in California to reopen. So much so that a lot of people have been saying that Disneyland is going to be closed, or, not just Disneyland, but these other theme parks are going to be closed until next year, until 2021. Now, that is something that I never imagined in my life to hear. Of course, Disneyland closed back in March. Being closed for almost, if they stay closed until next March, that'd be a year of Disneyland being closed. That's something you'd never expect to hear that, and it's just very mind-blowing to me. So I guess taking all of that into account, it will be a very tough road going forward. But Jeremy, how does all of that, make you feel? How does Disneyland possibly not being open until the next calendar year, how does that, sit with you?
Oh, well, of course it's devastating, and of course it's devastating to people who work there and stuff like that. It's extremely surreal. Look, I mean, before this I was working for a Broadway producer, and I mean, we never thought, and it's been announced that, the New York theater scene's basically not allowed to open until May 2021, which I'm sure to the Disney community sounds absolutely shocking. But it's actually not. I mean, it's surreal. It's devastating. It's sad. But I got to say, the leaders in the New York theater community are not throwing public hissy fits and closing shows as a statement to the state government. We're taking it. We're working together. We're going to get through it. And people are pretty protective of each other in this time. I wish the theme park industry showed the same strength. That being said, of New York, let me tell you this. If New York can get to that yellow tier, so can Orange County. I believe in you. You can do it. Follow the rules. It's tough. But if New York can do it, you can do it.
Yeah.
So I'll just say that.
Yeah, New York was one of the worst in the entire country at the beginning of the pandemic when it came to new cases. And now, here we are. Jeremy just said that they've gotten to yellow. I don't know. It's very interesting. It's a different,
relatively speaking,
sure.
Right? So there's a less than 1% positivity rate in New York. That is well below that yellow tier.
Yeah.
If New York can do it, so can you, Orange County. I believe in you.
Yeah, I don't know. It just is very strange to me. I mean, of course, we all expected these guidelines to come after, they haven't been changed at all since the last ones got leaked. So we saw this coming. But, just the thought, I mean, of course, you got to feel for the cast members as well. It's going to be a very interesting next couple of months going forward. But, of course, we do have to talk about the responses from, of course, the mayor of Anaheim and as well the president of Disneyland in response to these guidelines that have been released. So here we have the statement from Disneyland Resort President Ken Potrock. So let's go ahead and take a listen here to what Mr. Ken has to say. Quote, "We have proven that we can responsibly open with science-based health safety protocols strictly enforced at our theme park properties around the world. Nevertheless, the state of California continues to ignore this fact, instead mandating arbitrary guidelines that it knows are unworkable and that hold us to a standard vastly different from other reopened businesses and state-operated facilities. Together with our labor unions, we want to get people back to work, but these state guidelines will keep us shuttered for the foreseeable future, forcing thousands more people out of work, leading to inevitable closure to the inevitable closure of small family-owned businesses and irreparably devastating the Anaheim/Southern California community. So, yeah, that's the statement from Mr. Ken Potrock here. And I have the statement from the governor here, the Anaheim mayor, excuse me. Let me go ahead and see here. All right. The Anaheim mayor has said these guidelines fail working families and small businesses. As painful as this is, Disney and the city of Anaheim will survive. But too many Anaheim hotels, stores, and restaurants will not survive another year of this. Many are family businesses. These jobs the jobs they provide support other families. We can safely and responsibly open our theme parks and convention centers soon. The unions of the Disneyland Resort agree and support the reopening of the theme parks in the Tier 3, not the Tier 4, which would wipe out jobs in our city and destroy lives. So, as you can see here, two very different sides of the PR war. We have, of course, Disney and the city of Anaheim coming from one side. Then you have the governor, of California coming to the other side, clashing in the middle. And it is just, I mentioned this a few weeks ago. This will be interesting to read about in the Disney history books 10 or 20 years from now when this eventually, gets in there, reading back on all that has happened. But Jeremy, I guess it's not really anything different from what we would have expected the two to say, but what it just, right off the bat, what are your thoughts on the statement from the president of Disneyland and the mayor of Anaheim as well?
Yeah, I mean, listen, just this virus in general is taking a toll on family-owned businesses, and yeah, it's extremely difficult. The fact that Disneyland is a huge company, is responsible for all that. It's very hard. Again, it goes back to what I say every week on here, which is it's very complicated. It's complex, right? Yeah. There are so many different angles at which to talk about this. All that I try to encourage is to try to at least ask questions outside of the bubble of, but I love Disney and I will protect it. That's all I ask for. But yeah, I'm sure it's going to it's taking its toll on businesses in Anaheim and people who work in that area as well. But again, it's complicated, and I still say if Disney is actually walking the walk, then they need to get the experts in there to say, hey, we are actually walking the walk. I can't just take an executive's word for it. I just can't do that. I can't do that. Yeah.
I agree as well. And before we continue on here, we do have a voicemail here. Let's go ahead and take a listen to what this kind of short voicemail has to say.
This is Stanley Hudson. Gavin Newsom is a man-ass.
Oh my gosh. Stanley Hudson himself, you guys, has called into the show from the hit show The Office, and he called Gavin Newsom a menace. Oh my gosh. That's so funny. But I don't know. I was trying to make a joke of that. But anyways, someone's made a good point in chat. Let's see here. Ben Lasher said, we would have been over this in 6 weeks if we had a 90% shutdown, but we didn't. We did a 50% shutdown, so we lost all summer. And the Fuzzy Gray Toad also said above, tiers represent the control we have over the virus. These new guidelines should serve as an incentive for California to get this thing under control, which, is obviously true as well. But yeah, that sort of goes back to what we've been saying from the very beginning. If we took this virus more seriously, then, we wouldn't be in this situation anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, well, shutdown is not enough, right? That's I think the lesson learned here is that California was one of the first states to shut down. New York, of course, was one of the first states to shut down. And they still had, a pretty rough period. They had a rough go of it in terms of the virus. But obviously that's not enough, right? We learn from case studies around the rest of the modern developed world, right, that it's not just a shutdown you need. If you shut down and you create and establish a national testing and contact tracing plan, you can get this thing, you can't eradicate it, right? And you will have second waves and it will fluctuate a little bit, but you will get it under control faster than the way we're doing it, which is it's basically just like we think it's going down, then it goes up. There's really no clear sense the way I feel. I don't feel like we've made the most incredible progress as a country, whereas countries like South Korea was able to get to a really solid place of having at least that first wave under control by early summer, and early summer was when we were going, wait, this actually is bad. Oh no, New York is a death pit. Oops, so it's complicated. We definitely did not handle this well, and it's harder now because we are where we are, and it's hard to know what to do from this point on. So yeah.
Well, I'd like to sort of end off on this little sort of sentence in the statement here from the president of the Disney Resort. Let's see. But these state guidelines will keep us shuttered for the foreseeable future, forcing thousands more people out of work. Now, that is sort of inferring to me that there could possibly be more layoffs coming to the Walt Disney Company soon, the theme park soon, which I'm sure it's expected that more people are going to be laid off from the theme parks since these guidelines have just been released today. Disneyland probably won't open until either very late this year or sometime next year. So I guess it is in you hate to say it, but it is in the realm of possibility for more layoffs to be coming to the Walt Disney World Resort, possibly even Florida as well. So that is very devastating to think about if this does continue to go on like this. But again, we've been saying it's very complicated because you want to open Disneyland for the employees, the cast members, to get their jobs back. But then again, you're putting the cast members at risk. You're putting the guests at risk for, catching this virus. And, what really would you do, honestly, if you were in either of these people's positions? Would you open the parks? Would you keep it closed? I'm sure you do what your shareholders told you to do, probably. But, if you had this much influence, it's just very, it's a tough situation all around, really. And I most certainly don't have an answer for what any of these big companies can do to get their people back to work. But yeah, I guess that's just how 2020 has been going, huh? Yeah, so it is very interesting. And, like we've been saying, we're going to be keeping a very close eye on this developing story from the Disneyland possibly reopening, all that. But yeah, Jeremy, any final thoughts here you'd like to get in for this topic?
For this topic, no. We'll see how it develops. I hope people have started voting. If you vote by mail, I voted already. I don't. Some states early voting has started a while ago. So vote as early as possible if you can. Show up early to those polls on election day. Yeah.
You guys need to Pokemon go to the polls, you guys.
Don't bring one of your bad tweets into this show.
Pokemon. Who was it that said that? Was that was Hillary, wasn't that said that? Hillary Clinton that said that? I think so.
I don't remember.
It's been so long ago. It feels like 20 years since that happened. But anyways, I think that is going to wrap up this week's episode of Matterhorn Mondays. And we had a lot great to discuss here. Love to hear your thoughts. Of course, 575-386-5814 if you'd like to call in, leave a voicemail on any of the topics that we discussed, as well as leave a comment down below. We'd love to hear what you guys have to think about, especially the reopening guidelines that have been announced. Do you think the state has been or is being too harsh on Disney, or do you think they're doing the right thing being this strict? I'd love to hear. I put out a poll, actually, on my Twitter if you're in favor of opening up Disneyland or keeping it closed. It's very interesting seeing what the responses to that have been. kind of surprising. A lot of people actually voted to keep or to reopen Disneyland. I didn't really expect that to be the.
Oh, I expect that. I mean, here's the thing. Nothing against your poll, but it. I mean, it does go to the side of people's passionate views. I don't know anyone who's saying keep the parks closed! ! You know.
Yeah.
I do know people who are saying reopen the parks! ! So that's probably. I think it's more complicated than either of those two things. So. Anyway, but yes, you can answer the poll.
I think the poll ended, actually. I had it set for like
Oh,
only a
did it?
few hours. I just remembered that
Oh,
right as I
okay.
mentioned that. But yeah, so thank you all for coming to today's episode. As always, links to all of the articles we talk about will be down in the description below, as well as links to our socials, Alex's channel, if you'd like to go ahead and subscribe to Mr. Alex the Historian. And yeah, on that note, thank you all for joining us, and as always,